You want to make some picks on your favorite sports? Check out Underdog's Fantasy Pick'em game, where you can pick higher or lower on between 2 to 8 players and can win up to 325 times your entry by using code Niners when you sign up, and you'll get $1,000 bonus cash and a free pick.
From the alley-oops at Kezar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. I want to talk about free agent linebackers. Potentially the 49ers could go scoop up on the open market. And of course, everyone knows that the linebacker position is going to be interesting because number 57, Dre Greenlaw, is a free agent. And how do we feel about the 49ers potentially signing Dre Greenlaw is one of the keys to this offseason. I think the 49ers have every intention of making sure that Dre Greenlaw is a part of their 2025 roster. And I think Dre Greenlaw wants to be in San Francisco, but he also wants to be compensated. This is contract number 3 for Dre Greenlaw. It was just a little bit ago that he signed a 2-year deal to remain with the 49ers at around $8 million per season, which I think everyone kind of collectively took a breath and realized that Dre Greenlaw was going to stay with Fred Warner for the foreseeable future. But here we are again, and he's hitting free agency with a different set of circumstances than we've seen from Dre Greenlaw. He's coming off a injury-plagued season, and I say it that way because he wasn't injured the entire season. He did come back. He did show that he had recovered from the Achilles, but there were lingering effects from that. He was having calf problems with his legs, and that prevented him from playing the entire season. So we didn't get to see a fully healthy Dre Greenlaw for more than maybe 2 quarters. And then after that, his body decided, this is just a little bit too much. You're not that far along in your process. And everyone believes that Dre Greenlaw is going to be a lot better in 2025 because he's going to have a full offseason, more rehab, more time to get over that Achilles injury. So the 49ers have a decision to make. And if you just go off what we've seen from a place like Over the Cap or Spotrac, they are saying that Dre Greenlaw's number is not going to be that big, that he could potentially be a 1-year, $6 million deal on the open market. The 49ers could easily afford to pay Dre Greenlaw $6 million. I think most people were thinking it was going to be in the $12 to $16 million range because of how good Dre Greenlaw has proven to be. But the question marks around the league are, is Dre going to be back? Can he stay healthy? And those things weren't exactly answered in 2024, which could play into the 49ers' favor when trying to re-sign Dre Greenlaw. And maybe Greenlaw says, you know what? Let's just run this thing again. Let's get a 1-year deal. And then next year I'll go out and prove that I deserve another big-time contract before the end of my career. So I think there's a potential that Dre Greenlaw could come back. But we also have to prepare in case Dre Greenlaw does not come back, because it only takes one team to look at him and say, you know what, we think he's going to be all the way back. We have a lot of salary cap space. We can risk it. Let's offer him $12 million a year. And who would blame Dre Greenlaw for taking generational wealth and going ahead and getting the big-time contract that he deserves? Because he's a very good linebacker in this league. And if that happens, the 49ers cupboard is pretty bare. In fact, without Dre Greenlaw, I think that the 49ers' second biggest need on the entire team has been linebacker. And I got pushed back on that, of course. D-line and offensive line are definitely way up there. I don't argue with anyone. But however you want to argue it, linebacker without Dre Greenlaw, it needs a lot of help. So we're going to talk about Dre Greenlaw a little bit. We're going to break down what his numbers look like and also what the numbers of players potentially could come in. And there are a lot of veteran linebackers available on the open market, which could mean it pushes Dre Greenlaw's money down a little bit because it's a saturated market. It could play into the 49ers' favor a little bit. So I'm excited to talk linebackers and see what happens. Of course, our number one goal, Dre Greenlaw back in San Francisco playing for the 49ers. But please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, to NHL and UFC. Bet Online is your number one betting source for the new year. Every touchdown, to three-pointer, and hat trick, Bet Online has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. Bet Online, the game starts here. So, like I said, I'm going to start with Dre Greenlaw, and he only played 34 snaps in the 2024 season. So, not a lot of snaps for Dre, but he did have an overall grade of 82, which was 14th best. So, it was like a shooting star. It didn't last long, but boy, was it fantastic seeing Dre Greenlaw back out there. And I think the defense showed what happens when Fred Warner, and not even a healthy Fred Warner, but Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw are together, the defense is just different. I can guarantee one of the main things that Robert Saleh is going to want is Dre Greenlaw playing linebacker next to Fred Warner. It makes everything better. The run defense is better. It makes the pass defense better, the communications better, the attitudes better, the tackling's better. Dre Greenlaw is a fit for the San Francisco 49ers. Robert Saleh knows linebackers. He's going to want Dre Greenlaw back, and I think the 49ers are going to be motivated to get it done. And if he comes back, well, we're having a conversation that doesn't need to be had. But like I said, you have to prepare for every contingency. This is exactly what the front office does. They say, hey, we want Dre back. We're having good communications with his agent. We want to get this deal done. But what happens if all of a sudden one of these teams that have a $80 million in cap space say, let's go give Dre $15 million because he could be our Fred Warner? It can happen. And you have to be prepared in case that happens. And of course, you want guys who would come back, your loyalty. But if you're offering 8 and somebody offers him $15 million and you can't reach it, you just wish the guy good luck. He's a good person and a good player. So the ultimate goal is to get Dre Greenlaw back. He made 7 tackles in 2024, which he normally does so much better. But, the thing to look at, his run defensive grade was an 85 this season. That was 15th best, and that's where we saw it get a lot better. His coverage grade was a 63.5, which is not normal Dre Greenlaw levels, but he's also coming off an Achilles injury. Change of direction, things like that, a little bit of a problem. But whenever you end up being 14th best and you only played 34 snaps, you're doing something right. So if it's not Dre Greenlaw, who is it? Well, the 49ers do have one in-house candidate to potentially play his linebacker role, the will linebacker. And the will linebacker is significant because they play, all 3 downs. A lot of times your Sam linebacker will come off the field against 3 receiver sets and situations where you go to your sub package, you go to nickel or dime. Then obviously the third linebacker comes out on nickel and you play 2 linebacker sets. And normally it's the Mike linebacker, which is Fred Warner, and the will linebacker, which is Dre Greenlaw. Now, the guy that would fill in if Dre Greenlaw moved on, or at least have the odds-on favorite to play that position, is Dee Winters. And Dee Winters is a tremendous athlete. Absolutely fantastic. Built for the will linebacker role. Been through 2 seasons with the 49ers. I feel like he's gotten better each year that he's been here. Now, I would argue that he's not quite ready to take over as a starting linebacker for the 49ers. In fact, if they could sign Dre Greenlaw to a 2-year deal, and then if Dre decided to leave after that, I think Dee Winters would be ready in 2 years because there's a lot to like about his game. But let's talk a little bit about why this would be a step back for sure from Dre Greenlaw to Dee Winters. Number one, Dee didn't have a terrible grade. He was 66.4, which is 79th best out of 189 linebackers. So it's not terrible. You want to see that number go up for sure. You talk about run defensive grade. This is where it's a little bit of a problem. Of 51.2, 168th amongst those 189 linebackers. That's the question mark. And that's what's tough about him playing Sam linebacker is the Sam linebacker's in when teams are running their base set, which means they normally have more tight ends, a fullback on the field, a heavy jumbo, and it's usually run type situations. And then you have a linebacker that's not great against the run. The reason why I think he's not ready to be a 3-down linebacker. He displays the skills, the speed, the ability to get downhill and make plays, but the consistency to be able to shed blocks has been a problem. There needs to be more of an avoidance and not get caught up by some of these offensive linemen and tackles when he's going to make plays. But he does have ability when it comes to coverage. And how much ability does he have? Well, he has an 80 grade when it comes to coverage grade. That's 6th best in the league. So you're talking about a guy that's built to play the will linebacker and nickel sets. So there is an avenue for the 49ers, if Dre Greenlaw leaves, to be able to pair Dee Winters with somebody that's a little bit better against the run. Dee Winters could play, if you get a guy that's really good against the run, but maybe doesn't have the coverage game that Dee Winters has, well, that's okay. You play those 3 linebackers together, and then when you go to your nickel package, you go ahead and you pull out your better run-stopping linebacker, and you allow Dee Winters to go out there and play in space, which he does tremendously well. So it's not a terrible situation to be in. Of course, Dre Greenlaw can do both, so then you don't have to worry about it. But in this case, you could kind of take one player and the other and put them together and make it work. And we're going to talk about some of those linebackers that could fit nicely with Dee Winters if Dre Greenlaw moved on. Of course, we're going to talk about guys who have it all. The 49ers could just plug and play and not worry about it, and Dee Winters could continue to be your Sam linebacker, your 3rd linebacker on the unit. But if push came to shove, you could pair Dee Winters with somebody. It's a lot like edge rushers, where sometimes you have like a Cleveland Farrell, for instance, the 49ers had before, a very good player on early downs playing the run, and then you bring in the pass rusher and Chase Young after that, and he comes in and tries to get after the quarterback. That's how you can kind of pair and put guys together. 49ers did it with Eric Armstead and D Ford as well. So you could do it at linebacker. It's a little bit more unconventional, but it's a way to work around it if you don't have the guy to be able to get it done. Now, if you want a guy that is going to be able to do it all and step in, and this would be a home run if if Dre Greenlaw moves on. If Dre Greenlaw moves on, and we've been kind of for this for a while on the channel, and I know he's getting older. He's 34 years old now, but he had one heck of a season for the Washington Commanders, and that is Bobby Wagner. And Wagner is familiar with the system. If you played him next to Fred Warner, you would have a guy that could stop the run at a high level. And how good was Bobby Wagner this year? Well, the future Hall of Famer had an 89.9 grade. That was 3rd best amongst all linebackers this season. It's just absolutely phenomenal. He played over 1,000 snaps, 1,071 snaps. He had 95 tackles, which was 11th best. So the guy was getting it done. And you're talking about run defensive grade. He's a 90.8 run defensive grade. He also is a very good blitzer and pass rusher, a 91 grade, number 1 amongst all linebackers. So you're going to be more aggressive with Robert Saleh. Bobby Wagner's the guy. So it's one of those things you like him. Now, where it gets a little bit interesting is when it comes to coverage. And we're talking about a guy that's going to be potentially your will linebacker. And I know he normally plays Mike, but I think you could convince him if he's out searching for a Super Bowl. And I think he is. And I think the Commanders are going to want to make a run at him and try to re-sign him. But if Dre leaves, the 49ers could go a little bit more all in and pay Bobby Wagner a little bit more money. But how about this? A 68.1 coverage grade. It's definitely not the best of his career. He's gotten slower, and it's more difficult for him to cover out in space than he used to be. He used to be one of the top linebackers in the league, but that's still 33rd best in the NFL when it comes to coverage, which that's pretty darn good considering how many linebackers there are ranked in this. And, 3 sacks this season. He did a really good job. Only 1 forced fumble, which is a little bit surprising, especially with a guy like Bobby Wagner. But I think that even though he's old, he's a guy that is playing still at a very high level. And the 49ers got to consider, 2025 one of those make it or break it seasons. And, I know a lot of people have been talking down on Bobby Wagner through the years, but I don't think anyone can do that now. He's just been so good. But this is only if Dre leaves. If Dre stays, there's no reason to go out and get a player like Bobby Wagner. There'd be a redundancy there, and they would not play enough snaps together to warrant that type of thing happening. Same thing, I did want to bring up Zach Bond. A lot of people bring him up, but there is no way that Zach Bond is coming to the 49ers. I can't see them paying the type of contract that he's going to get on the open market. I do believe he's going to have the number one linebacker contract, and so he will set the market. I don't think the 49ers are going to be willing to go that route. So I'm not going to sit here and blow smoke and talk about him because I just don't think it's a possibility. Now, here's a guy that the 49ers actually signed last year. Then he decided that he was not going to officially sign. He went to the Cowboys to work with Mike Zimmer, his former coach, and that is Eric Kendricks. And Kendricks is going to be a free agent. He had a good year in Dallas. It wasn't a great year, but it was a very good year. And this is where you start getting into guys that would make sense in place of Dre Greenlaw if he left, but also a guy that if you could talk him into coming in and playing along with Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner, it'd be good. But I do think they're high enough on Dee Winters. But listen to the rankings that he had. He had a 75.2 overall grade, a 78.5 pass rush grade, which is pretty good. His run defense grade is 78.3, was 33rd best in the NFL, and his coverage grade was 62.7. So he didn't cover as good as Bobby Wagner, but he's also not as bad stopping the run as Dee Winters. Dee Winters really struggles there, and that's where someplace Kendricks plays well. So that's why I'm bringing up Sam linebacker. Kendricks would make sense playing Sam linebacker, and also he would be a nice pairing if Dre Greenlaw left. Kendricks could be your Sam linebacker, really good against the run, play those early downs. When you go to your sub package with nickel, then you go ahead and you bring in a guy like Dee Winters, who's far superior when it comes to coverage than Eric Kendricks. Would the 49ers be willing to even go to Kendricks after what happened last year where he admitted or agreed to sign with them and then left? I don't know. I don't know what the conversation was behind the scenes. I don't know how they felt afterwards. But you usually don't burn bridges because opportunities like this can come back up, and then you want to be able to come back. So Kendricks, another guy, and I'm kind of going in order a little bit on how I feel about these players fitting in, and I think he could be a potential option for the 49ers. Now, one that I've heard brought up, and if you started looking at his numbers, you would think that this is just bananas, is Kaiser White, who plays for the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, there's a lot to like. He's a fast dude. He's got a lot of speed, but he had really one of the worst seasons of his career last year with Arizona. He only had a 48.8 overall grade in 2024. That's 156th best. He did play over 1,000 snaps. He had 78 tackles. Those are all good things, but his coverage grade, he was dreadful in coverage, 32 overall. Now, his run defense wasn't bad at a 73, but, I mean, he really struggled in coverage, and that hurt him a lot. I mean, this guy was an absolute liability in coverage, which, he wasn't that bad with Philadelphia. Yes, the 49ers, when he was with Philadelphia, definitely game plan to get Christian McCaffrey lined up, one-on-one with Kaiser White. I came on here every day and talked about how that was a key matchup in that NFC Championship game and even, other subsequent matchups. But it just, I don't think Kaiser White makes sense, but I wanted to bring him up because he is a name that people are throwing around. But I think when you look at the way he played, unless you think that you can really make him fit the system, and he's a guy who's athletic, who usually is hyper aggressive, I just don't think Kaiser White fits the bill. One guy that I do think does fit the bill, and this guy has been playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's a Landon Roberts. A Landon Roberts, to me, would be a really good third linebacker. So let me set the stage for you. Dre Greenlaw doesn't come back, and you know that you've got to pair someone with Dee Winters. A Landon Roberts might be the perfect guy to do it. Number one, he's pretty good on special teams. But listen to this. He had a 77.2 overall grade last year. That's 22nd best. He was a 90.4 run defensive grade. That's right, 90.4, fifth best. I want Landon Roberts playing early downs for the San Francisco 49ers. But his coverage grade, 50.9, that's 133rd. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to pairing guys together. We lose Dre Greenlaw. Maybe we take Dee Winters and Landon Roberts, and we make Dre Greenlaw out of two guys. One plays in your nickel sets, and Dee Winters. In your base sets, they both play. But Landon Roberts helps when it comes to run stopping ability because he's far superior in that area. You can take two guys and kind of turn them into one really good linebacker. And I think Landon Roberts is so good when it comes to stopping the run that might make a lot of sense for the 49ers potentially, to bring him in. And he was, a guy who had a pretty good season. He only played 478 snaps, so he's not an every down linebacker. That is for sure. And I think that would be how you would sign him. But knowing that in base sets you could have him out there would be pretty big for the 49ers. So I like Landon Roberts. He's 30 years old. This is kind of his ceiling. He's not going to get a lot better. But when you're looking at a linebacker room and piecing together a linebacker room, that might make a lot of sense for the San Francisco 49ers. Now, here's a guy that's probably not going to be one of the favorites of 49er fans. Reason being, he's been injured a lot over the last 2 seasons. In fact, he's only played 6 games in the past 2 seasons. And you might say, Ant, why are we even talking about him? Well, here's why. A couple of reasons. Number one, when he was at his best, he was one of the better linebackers in the league. He's been doing it for a long time. Second of all, I've seen this guy play since he was in high school. And I'm talking in person, and he's a phenomenal player, but he's a better person as well. He has consistently put his teammates above himself in Carolina. He has taken less money to help that football team try to compete, even though they haven't done that. And he's also a guy that has a good relationship with Fred Warner. And I'm talking about Shaq Thompson. And Shaq Thompson is still only 30 years old. He's an athletic linebacker who has dealt with way too many injuries, and he's going to be coming off an Achilles. I'm not saying that you go and get this guy and replace Dre Greenlaw. What I am saying is we need veteran linebackers in this room anyways. We need guys that can step in and help out the young guys play. And the 49ers have been willing to take chances on veteran players that have had an injury history when they're going to come in for the minimum type rate. He's a local guy. He went to Grant High School in Sacramento. He's a tremendous athlete. I've seen him play every position, running back, wide receiver. I mean, the dude can do it all. He's been a consummate pro for the Carolina Panthers. Now, last year, he did not play a lot of snaps. He only played 245 snaps last year. In that time, he had 28 tackles, and he had a 67.4 overall grade for him. Now, when it comes to playing defense, his run defense was a 73.2, which was 48th best, and his coverage grade was a 62.9, which was 60th best. And I think both of those would be better if he's healthy, but he can still play linebacker at a very high level. I would love for the 49ers to bring him in as a veteran that could contribute. That could be a veteran that helps you on special teams, but also could help those young guys grow. I love Shaq Thompson. I think he would be a player the 49ers would definitely be lucky to have. So keeping an eye on Shaq Thompson. And I know the injury thing is going to scare a lot of people, but for a league minimum salary, I don't think it should scare anyone. There's no reason not to give him a shot if the medical comes back good and just see what he can do. Because, like I said, he's a one heck of a player, but he also has the team first mentality, and I love that about him. So he's somebody that I'm keeping an eye on, especially with the Northern California roots, to see if maybe he wants to come in and potentially, join a really good defense, and he could be a support for a lot of the linebackers here. Now, a guy that got a lot of attention, early on, is Green Bay Packers linebacker Isaiah McDuffie. And, he was getting people's attention the year before, too. Now, his numbers don't scream, let's go get Isaiah McDuffie. He was a 56.1 overall grade. He had a 66.7 run defensive grade, which is pretty good. His coverage grade, once again, awful. So this is a Sam linebacker type guy. I think that, the 49ers, McDuffie hustles. He runs around. He's still young, 25 years old. Still has an opportunity to grow. I think he could be better in the 49ers system, but he did get a 1 year under Jeff Hafley in Green Bay. So I'm sure that adjustment definitely was something that he was having to get used to. But I think if you're without Dre Greenlaw, you start looking at guys like McDuffie that can help you on special teams. These are some depth guys that also the 49ers can add. And so I think potentially you bring in McDuffie if you are needing a fourth linebacker or somebody to come in and play third linebacker. So he's a potential guy that I'm looking at that the 49ers could ultimately bring in. Now, because we've been talking about coverage and it's so important, there was a linebacker that caught my eye, and he's not good at stopping the run. He was, kind of moved around a lot last year. He was with Seattle, and then he was with the Miami Dolphins. But what caught my eye was how good he was in coverage. And the 49ers often struggle with linebackers in coverage. It's becoming something that's important, especially if you're going to be in a nickel package. And so I want to keep an eye on a guy that could make sense for the 49ers when it comes to, potentially getting an opportunity in coverage, and that's Tyrell Dotson. And Tyrell Dotson's, 26 years old. He's not a good run defensive player. 172nd with a 47 overall run defensive grade. That's not good. 49ers ran at him consistently, but if there's an area that he's really good at, it's coverage. An 82.9. That was fifth best, an elite trait. And anytime you start looking at guys that could potentially be linebacker 3, linebacker 4, you look for elite traits. And you see a guy like this that's been traded, been moved around. Well, one thing you like about him is what he can do in coverage. So the question is, can Johnny Hollins improve his run defense? If you feel like you can get it better, I'm not talking like, up into 65%, but could you get it up to 58%? With that elite coverage grade, you might feel a little bit more comfortable with him in space. So that was something to keep an eye on as potentially what he could do. Now, another guy the 49ers definitely should have interest in is Neville Hewitt from the Houston Texans. So Neville Hewitt is 6'2", 234 pounds. He's 31 years old, so he's been around, but he plays in the system for DeMeco Ryans. So this is a guy that's a complete scheme fit. You've already seen it. You already know it. He was a 70.2 overall grade. That's 57th best. He played 340 snaps last season and had 32 tackles. So he's not your every single down linebacker, but what he is a guy that gets it done at a pretty good rate. He had a 61.5 defensive run grade. He also had a 74.7 coverage grade, which is good. So if you're looking for a Sam backer that's better against the run than Dee Winters, and then doesn't cover as good as Dee Winters, but it's a little bit better than some of the other guys, it could be an option, and he fits the system. And you've got to replace guys like Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, and you've got to get better than a guy like Jalen Graham. You've got to definitely start stocking the cupboard. And I think it might be smart for the 49ers to not just get guys that can play and run. You want to draft some guys, but also let's get some veterans that know how to play special teams well, that know how to step into the defense and play well. And so a guy like Neville Hewitt could make a lot of sense for the 49ers, whether that's linebacker 3 or 4. And the ability to play special teams is huge. And he's definitely got the ability to do so. So I like a guy like Neville Hewitt who can help out your defense. He's come from the same scheme, so it's not going to be a struggle for him. And so I think that he would be a guy that the 49ers should definitely be interested in, and they probably will. And so, when you're talking about these linebackers, I think I broke it down kind of into some different levels. It's the add-on to if Dre's there, right? Those guys. It's the guys, if Dre's gone, then it's the guys you pair with Dee Winters to make one really good linebacker or one good linebacker group. And then there's the guys that can just step in if Dre's not there and completely fill the role. So just to go over it a little bit on the guys who could just step in, I think it's important to remember is Bobby Wagner and Eric Kendricks for sure. They could just step in and play that role. I think also if Shaq Thompson was healthy, he could as well. But that's going to be a big question mark to see if he's available. I think when you're talking about guys you could play with Dee Winters and between the two of them have the skill set to have a really good linebacker room, I think you're talking about, Shaq Thompson's one of them, a Landon Roberts for sure. I think he's another one that would fit really good. Neville Hewitt would be one. And then a guy I didn't talk about, but I had him on my list as Robert Spillane from the Raiders. And Robert Spillane is really good at run defense. 87.3 run defensive grade. That was 8th best in the NFL. So imagine placing his 87.3 run defensive grade in your base set as Sam linebacker. And then in your nickel sets, he comes off the field and Dee Winters comes on and he has an 80 overall coverage grade, which is 6th best in the NFL. Well, that's kind of optimizing your potential players if you lose Dre Greenlaw. So that's kind of the categories I was putting it at. I think the home run shots for replacing Dee Winters if he leaves, of course, Bobby Wagner, who had one of the great seasons for an older player, that is for sure, and Eric Kendricks, who the 49ers tried to bring in last season. So these are the linebackers I think the 49ers could be interested in if certain things happen. It all starts with the domino of Dre Greenlaw. If Dre Greenlaw comes back, which every 49er fan universally wants, me included, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan want it, Robert Saleh wants it, Dre Greenlaw wants it, his family wants it, everyone wants Dre back. But you have to have the contingency in case. And your first options are Bobby Wagner, Eric Kendricks. Let's bring them in, plug and play as the will linebacker next to Fred Warner. If that is not available, then we got to figure out how to give support to Dee Winters, especially in year one. Can we bring in like a guy like Robert Spillane to play Sam linebacker, or Landon Roberts to play Sam linebacker, and allow Dee Winters to play Will when you get into those obvious pass downs? That is a possibility. You're also going to want to attack it in the draft, that's for sure. 1 or 2 draft picks at linebacker should be what the 49ers do. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up Tatum Bethune, who I thought had a pretty good rookie season when it came to stopping the run, but he needs to get a lot better when it comes to coverage. He had some moments where he looked good, and I've watched a lot of him being a Florida State fan, so I've seen a lot of Tatum Bethune through the years. There's a lot to like, but he needs to get a lot better too, and he could be that Sam linebacker to put with Dee Winters as well, so it could be homegrown. But when you look beyond that, they had cut Jalen Graham. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles could likely be gone now that we have a new special teams coordinator. I think there's going to be some changes at linebacker. The 49ers need to get more depth. They need to get a lot better. And I think this is some options for the 49ers as far as free agency. There will be plenty of options in the draft as well. Lots of good players there. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening to audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. This episode was brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. Leave in the comment section, guys I missed, what your thought process is at linebacker, and I'll make sure to check it out. I really appreciate you all. I'll catch you on the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.